Hello and welcome back to XVDA Bibles. My name is Ethan. So today we're going to be doing part 2 of this beginning to end Bible Rebind how-to. So this here is the CSB large print reference Bible that I started in part 1. We went over how to remove the imitation leather cover while maintaining as much reinforcement as we can. I as well cleaned up the spine, got it ready for the reinforcement, which we added. I also went ahead and did some French ultramarine art gilding on the page edges. So this reinforcement now is dry and we are ready to move on with the next few items. So the plan for today is that we're going to be going through the process of doing our ribbons, doing our head and tail bands, as well as doing an Oxford hollow. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, so I've already done a little bit of prep for this video, so I've already pre-cut my ribbons and my head and tail bands. So hopefully, you won't see me, wasting a bunch of time doing like boring cutting and stuff like that. So, so when you go to attach your head and tail bands, when you go to attach your head and tail bands, you want to make sure you do your ribbons first. So we'll go ahead and do the ribbons here, and then we'll do the head and tail bands. So I got my PVA glue here. So obviously before you attach your ribbons and head and tail bands, Oxford hollow, all of that, you want to make sure that you know which side of your text block is the top and the bottom. As I mentioned in part 1, I have just very recently made that mistake and have actually attached my ribbons and my Oxford hollow, all of that upside down very recently. So you want to make sure that you know which side is the top. So I know that this little bar of black ink here on this text block is the top, and I distinctly remember me putting verifying that this is the top. So yeah, so I've got 3 navy Beresford ribbons here that I'm going to be putting on this text block. Now I don't use Beresford ribbons on every single one of my rebinds. I use a number of different types of ribbon. And, in the long run, I'm going to be probably transitioning to 100% Beresford ribbons, but honestly, there's a lot of really high quality ribbon out there that is very, very inexpensive compared to Beresford ribbons. So, I'm not super pressed to use Beresfords on all of my rebinds. But, if you're out there and you want to order a rebind from me and you want Beresfords, I can get, whatever color of Beresford ribbons that you want for your rebind. It's not going to be any type of extra charge or anything like that. That'll just be one motivation for me to go ahead and start updating or upgrading my ribbon quality. So, but currently navy Beresford ribbons are the only Beresfords that I have. So with ribbons, in order to get them to adhere well, you need a good amount of glue. And in order for them to look good once your head and tail bands are attached, you need to make sure that they're pressed kind of in here towards the gilding, because otherwise this little edge like right near the corner of the text block won't adhere very well. So little pro tip there for you. So if you're doing, this text block is like the perfect the perfect width for 3 ribbons, which is why I'm doing 3. So yeah. So you do want to be cautious about your ribbon, and touching your ribbon with gluey fingers. So I'm kind of being aware of like, okay, I don't have glue on my left hand, I have glue on my right hand. So I'm only going to touch the area of the ribbon that's going to be presented to the eye once the Bible is completed with my non-gluey hand. So just the more you do this, kind of the more aware, the more you are aware of that type of thing. So that looks pretty good. This actually might need a little bit more glue under here. So, and this is the same type of glue, just in a little needle bottle, which if you're not a rebinder, if you don't have a little needle bottle, these things are really, really handy. So, one thing to be aware of too is that you don't want, see, I put a little bit too much glue, so I want to, you don't want glue excreting out this way where it's visible. So I think that is good. Looks good to me. All right. So these are, head and tail bands. You can, if you're just starting out and you haven't, bought any, you can just reuse the ones that are already on your text block if you so desire. So I've gotten into the habit of always keeping my glue bottles upside down, because I don't like, when I'm doing a bunch of projects at once, I don't like having to wait. I don't like having to wait for my glue to work its way down in the bottle. So while that glue dries a little bit, the PVA glue starts to get tacky after a couple minutes of drying. So I'm going to go ahead and work here on my other side while that glue sets a little bit. So love the smell of PVA glue in the evening. Late into the evening is kind of my ideal Bible rebind time, because I have 2 boys, 2 wild boys. One is 2 years old and one is 3 years old, just turned. One is 3 years old, just turned 3, and the other is 1.5. And my wife is pregnant, so everyone in the house is tired except for me. So it's Bible time for me. So let's see. So the trick with this is that you want to put a little bit of pressure on these headbands as they're setting. And you also want to kind of look at these headbands going this way at an angle to make sure these headbands are straight. Because you don't want, I mean, this headbands are fabric, so you can, if you're not careful, your headbands will kind of look like this, bowed out, and that's not what you want. You want them to be real straight. So that looks great. So what I'll also do, little tip of the trade here. This is 1/4 inch masking tape. So what I'll do too, if I don't want to wait on these to set, I will just tape these down, and that'll give really consistent pressure on the headbands to make sure they set really well. And what I'm doing here is I am making sure, crap, dang, that wasn't good. It's too busy talking. So I use 2 types of glue for my Bible rebinds. Most Bible rebinders use Lineco PVA glue, which is pretty good. I do think it's on the watery side. So in this bottle, I have Aleene's tacky craft glue, which is a type of PVA glue. It's a little bit thicker. This is what the bottle looks like. I like this stuff a lot. It's what I use mainly. I think it has a little bit firmer of a hold than Lineco PVA glue, but Lineco PVA glue works better in these needle bottles because it's thinner and more watery. So yeah. All right. I think I just was using shouldn't have used the Lineco glue on my headbands. I should have just used my old faithful Aleene's tacky glue. So I will go ahead and add a little bit more glue on this side. So Aleene's tacky glue is also cheaper than Lineco glue. And I've actually had issues with Lineco PVA glue is like what all the bookbinders swear by. And I haven't had the best experiences with it. I did a couple, I've had issues with Lineco. Where'd that other, okay. I've had issues with Lineco glue becoming like really too, you know what, this headband isn't, that headband isn't wide enough. So the thing about doing this on camera is that I'm not thinking about kind of like halfway distracted here. So I'm going to go ahead and get this headband, a new headband here sized up. All right, that should work for us better here. So let's try this a third time. So I like putting my finger here and kind of wiping the glue away from really close to the right on the corner, because you don't want glue kind of squirting out onto your text block. Still too long. First it was too short, then it was too long. Just part of the process. All right. All right, that looks great. Go ahead and do my masking tape trick here, like so. So that is good to go. I'm gonna do my Oxford Hollow next, and the way I do this, so an Oxford Hollow, for those of you out there who don't know the lingo, an Oxford Hollow is a tube of material that one side attaches to your text block. It's a hollow tube. One side attaches to your text block, and the other side attaches to your cover. So the way this looks when it's completed looks like this. So this is a hollow tube of paper here. One side is obviously glued to my text block, and this side is going to be glued to my cover. So what an Oxford Hollow does is it ensures that your text block hugs your, it ensures that your text block hugs your cover and helps reinforce your text block. A lot of people think that Oxford Hollows help your text block be more flexible, and I don't think that is the case. I think that is a myth. I think that's kind of a misnomer. Anything that you add, anything that you glue onto your text block, anything at all, is going to in subtle ways prevent your cover or prevent your text block from being more flexible than it could be. The most flexible cover or the most flexible text block is one that has nothing added to it, and anything that you add on top of it, anything you glue to it, is going to make it slightly less flexible. But an Oxford Hollow is very beneficial in that it helps your cover and your block be very, very tightly adhered to one another. So, little fun fact there. So we'll go ahead and make this here. And the way I do that is I use a piece of Post-it note to measure exactly how wide my spine is. And you remember in part one, I made sure that there are a really clear edge right here. And I mentioned in part one that that's going to help me later, and that's going to help me now. And then since I have that nice crisp edge that I made in part one, it's going to help me make my Oxford Hollow the perfect width. So I'm essentially just wrapping this piece of paper around my text block and putting a mark on either the perfect edge of either side, and that's going to be 1/3 of my width of my Oxford Hollow. This is black craft paper, like normal construction paper. And this is what I make my Oxford Hollows out of. So you can see here, I've been cutting perfectly straight lines here, and obviously there's a little bit that is wonky right here. So I'm just gonna make I'm essentially gonna take this width and mark it 3 times. And make my Oxford Hollow 3 times the width of my cover, and I'll show you why that is in a bit. None of my white gel pens, all my white gel pens have dried up. All right, so I essentially just made 3 marks with 3 spaces the width of that marking that I made with my Post-it note here. So, and I'm just, what I'm doing is I'm just making a mark down that line to know where my folds of my Oxford Hollow should go. All right, so this is my Oxford Hollow material. And so you see here it has 2, pencil marks. And what I essentially need to do is just fold it into thirds. So I've seen some bookbinders do this by, measuring your piece for your Oxford Hollow and then gluing this onto your spine and then folding it. But I found that this way works better for me. All right, so now we glue it. So I use a Yoo-hoo glue stick, which is this type of glue is archival, and it's what like bougie artists use for like fancy collages and stuff. So it's essentially like a really high quality PVA glue style glue stick. So, and I use this glue versus just, brushing PVA glue onto here because this thinner paper wrinkles really bad when you put PVA glue on it. So I've been using this Yoo-hoo stick with great success so far. So, but I'll be attaching this to the text block with PVA glue. So that looks great. So now the little trick that I do as this dries is I put a piece of granite over it to make sure that it's perfectly flat, and then I glue it to my text block. All right, so my Oxford Hollow is dry, and let's go ahead and attach it. So the way you'll want to do this is you want your Oxford Hollow to be the exact height of your text block, or not but which would mean like here, just not covering like the outside little lip of your headbands and tailbands. And when you do this, you want to make sure that your Oxford Hollow is at a nice right angle when you go to cut it. And when I do this, so you can see here, there's a hollow tube here. So when I do this, I like to find, so one of these layers is double thick and the other one is single thick. So I like putting, like I said earlier, any extra material that you put on your text block is going to make it naturally more reinforced and less floppy. So on the side that I have my single layer, I want that one to be glued onto my text block, and I want my double layer side to be glued onto my cover when that eventually happens. All right, so now we just need some glue on our text block. So you want to make sure that you have glue all the way up to the very edges here. And because we made that nice, acute, and distinct angle, this Oxford Hollow is not going to have any issues adhering really well to this text block here. So when you go to do this, the area of this Oxford Hollow that's most likely going to come up and not adhere well are like the edges right here. So you want to make sure that these edges are really, really pressed down. So when I do this too, I'll check back in maybe 10 or 15 minutes to make sure, there's not a seam, some of the edge separating from the text block, because then you would want to make sure that it's nice and pressed down. So, but yeah, all I need to do now is let this dry. I like letting my Oxford hollows dry at least overnight before I start doing measurements. So part 3 is going to be measuring my text block, doing all the math in order to get the correct measurements for my liner and for my cover. And definitely make sure you watch part 3, because I have some really, really helpful tips for how to do the math where you don't do errors, where you don't make errors. So, and I've measured. At this point, I've done about 30 to 35 rebinds without doing any math errors. So definitely check in for part 3 for how to do that. So thank you for watching. This is Ethan from Ex Fide Bibles.